So I was practicing my TED talk last week in my empty courtroom, and I was really wound up, and I was doing it for about 45 minutes, and in through the door bursts this big hulking man, and it's a deputy sheriff, and he's looking around, and he has his hand on his gun, and I say to him, "Deputy, is there anything I can help you with?" And he said, "We just got a call that there's a disturbance in here." And I said, "Disturbance? I'm working on a speech." And he looked at me sideways, you know, those skeptical looks that people give you, and shook his head and walked out the door. Well, if any of you find my talk disturbing, I apologize. And I would ask also, if you do, please don't call the police on me. And if you do, I'm just asking for a 10-minute head start. In 1954, Marlon Brando starred in a movie on the waterfront. And he was a boxer. And he was shamed. And he was shamed because he threw fights for just a little bit of money. And he regrets it as his life goes on. And he talks to his brother later in the movie, and he says, "I could have been somebody. I could have been a contender." Well, there are a lot of people that don't have the capacity of being contenders. All of you have that capacity. All of you have the potential of being very, very special people. And I'll talk with you in just a little bit about some of the tips that I'm going to give you that might help you on your journey. I've studied special people and what makes them special all my adult life. People like Fran Jabera and Harvey Jabera and Linwood Sexton and Mike James and Mike Kennedy. And I'm not one of those people, unfortunately. But I have found that there are 22 traits that make people special. We'll talk about 4 of them this evening. Special people really care for other people. Tonya, my wife, and I have twin sons, Brock and Kaylee. They went to college in Washington, D.C., but they went to separate colleges. It's 2004. It's time for them to graduate, so we go back for the graduation. At Georgetown, there is an honors convocation that's taking place on a Friday morning. There are about 250 of us in attendance. There were 3 speakers. They were all good. One was a professor. One was a businessman that had gone to Georgetown, and one was a student who was going to go to work on Wall Street. All the speeches were good because they were short. The student gave by far the best speech. He was motivational. He was inspirational. We leave the auditorium and we're going to a reception. We're walking across a grassy area with a wide sidewalk, and we hear a horn honk, and we look to the right, and it is the groundskeepers. And they're in their mid-40s, and they're perspiring because they've been working for several hours. They get out of their vehicle, they shout a name and wave. We look to our left, and it is the student speaker that they are waving at. He waves at them, they walk toward one another, they embrace, and they talk about how they're going to miss one another. They say their goodbyes. They make one another feel important. Greg Marshall is a very successful basketball coach at Wichita State. We're lucky to have him. His first head coaching job was at Winthrop in 1998-99. Winthrop is picked to finish last in the conference. They just didn't know about Greg Marshall at that time. And about halfway through the season, the team adopts this young boy who's handicapped. He's confined to a wheelchair, and he becomes part of the team. Greg Marshall's team, Winthrop, wins the Big South Conference, but they have to win the postseason tournament to go to the NCAA tournament. They make it to the championship game. It's the biggest game in Greg Marshall's life up to that point. It is the biggest game in the history of Winthrop basketball because they have a chance to go to their first NCAA tournament. The team rushes off the floor at halftime. It's a tightly contested game with Radford. Coach Marshall walks off behind them, deep in thought. He's contemplating his halftime talk. He stops at midcourt. He turns around and walks back to this young boy in the wheelchair and says to him, "What are you waiting for? We need you in the locker room." At this most significant point in his life, he is showing someone else that he really cares. Special people are good listeners, and you have to be a good listener. So I do criminal work as a judge early in the morning and early in the afternoon. There was a period of about 2.5 months when we had far too many young people appearing in front of me, people 19, 20, 21, that had done some really bad things. Some of them had done some horrific things. And I asked them, who was your mentor when you were growing up? Who helped you make the right decisions? Who did you talk to and who would listen to you when you were trying to find your way? And almost all of them said, nobody. And that's one of the reasons that some of the young people are in trouble, because nobody will listen to them. My first assignment as a judge was in family law, and that's pretty acrimonious stuff. There were 4 of us judges in family law court, and we each had about 800 cases in 1 year, usually child custody, usually child support. I got to the point where I started to interview a lot of these kids. They're ages 7 to 17. And I would interview them in my courtroom, just the child and me, one-on-one. My assistant, Mary, was in the back of the room. I'd sit on the same side of the table as they were on. I'd be in my street clothes. The interviews would last about 25 minutes. I would ask them about their family. I would ask them about their friends and their schooling and their hobbies. I'd never ask them who they wanted to live with, and I never allowed them to tell me that. When we got to the end of the interview, I would say to them, how could your life be better? And every one of the young kids said the same thing except one. The one exception said, my life could be better if I could go to Disneyland. I said, well, my life could be better if I could go to Disneyland also. All of the other kids said, my life would be better if my mom and dad would stop being so mad at each other all the time. If my parents would stop being so angry at each other all the time. And I would say, did you talk to them about it? And each one of those kids said yes, but they wouldn't listen. They didn't care. Well, special people listen. Special people express an appreciation to others. I teach a course out here at Wichita State. It's entrepreneurship. Just this week, we're dealing with ethics. I think ethics comes from the heart more than it comes from the book. I had an assignment that I handed out on Monday, and the assignment is very simple, and it deals with ethics. I have a bonus question on the bottom of the assignment. For 5 points, talk to somebody and tell them how much you appreciate them. Tell them how much they mean to you. And if you did that by Friday at 5 o'clock, just write yes at the bottom of this page. If you didn't do it, write no, or don't write anything. And I said the ethics part of it is this. If you write yes and you didn't call somebody, you have some serious soul searching to do. You have to correct your moral compass. But the thing that is surprising to me, 5 easy points, over 50% of the students will not call someone and will not tell them how much they appreciate them. It's just a very difficult thing to do. Tim McGuigan and I coached youth sports for 11 years. The first sport that we coached was t-ball. You know what t-ball is? It's like baseball, only you hit it off a tee, you don't hit it off a pitcher. And you have 3 swings to hit it fair. It's for little kids. And we were coaching kindergartners and first graders, boys and girls. Now, in hitting the ball off the tee, you have to hit from up above. We had a lot of little kids, and that bat was just a little bit too heavy for them. One of the kids on our team, a little tyke, was Katie O'Grady. Is that a terrific name or what? And Katie was tiny. So she comes up for the first time in the first game, and the bat head is dropped. She swings up. There's no way you hit the ball coming up from underneath it. So she's out in 3 swings. And that's okay. She's fine with it. She comes up the second time, and the bat head drops, and she swings up, and she's out in 3 swings. And now there's a little tear running down her cheek. We have a practice the next Tuesday, and at the practice, Tim and I hold the bat heads up for the kids that are smaller. And then they swing down, and they can hit the ball. And Katie feels really great because we've been holding her bat head up. She comes up the next game, the first time, because kids only bat twice in these games. And the bat head is up, and she looks strong, and she looks good. And the bat head starts to drop down. And all of a sudden, she's hitting from underneath again. And she strikes out. And now she's almost inconsolable as she goes to the bench. When she comes up the second time, I say to the umpire, who's a high school kid, do you mind if we hold Katie's bat head up when she hits? I mean, this is kindergartners and first graders. I mean, what is he going to say? And he said, that's fine. So I hold Katie's bat head up. She swings from above and hits the ball fair. She is the fastest runner on our team. And in a cloud of dust, she's running down to first base. All the parents are screaming for her. I'm back at home plate, screaming, "Go, Katie, go." Tim McGuigan is right next to me, cheering for Katie. She jumps on first base. She turns back to face me at home plate, and she is ecstatic. She's so happy. And just as fast as she had run to first base, here she comes running back to home plate. And I'm thinking, oh my heavens, Katie, I didn't tell you what to do when you got to first base. And when she finally gets back to me at home plate, she grabs me around my leg, looks up at me, and says, "Thank you." And she did the same thing for Tim. And that expression of appreciation is my fondest sports memory to this very day. Also, special people are dreamers. They dream deeply and they work hard to realize their dreams. There was a young boy in Wichita in middle school, and we know him. In middle school, he decided he wanted to work for the Justice Department or the FBI. So he goes to college in Washington, D.C. The first week he is there, he gets an appointment with the Justice Department and the FBI, and they tell him, you should major in accounting because there's so much white-collar crime, and that would give him the best chance. So he didn't particularly care for accounting, but he majored in it and graduated #1 in his class in accounting. They told him he should study abroad. So his junior year, he studied in Turkey, and he learned to speak Turkish. When he graduates, they said, now you need some familiarity with the Middle East. So he accepted a scholarship at Oxford and got a master's degree in Middle Eastern affairs and studied Arabic. He worked for the government for 2 years, then went to law school because it would give him a better opportunity to get the job that he wanted. And now he has that job that he dreamed about when he was 15 years old, almost 15 years ago. He was a dreamer, and he worked hard on his dream. I was on a scholarship committee for many years at Wichita State, and they give pretty substantial scholarships for all of you out there. And one of the people that we interviewed, and there were 5 of us on the committee, was a girl named Anna, and she was dynamite. She had credentials off the chart, and she was a senior in industrial engineering. And we said to her, Anna, are there other engineers in your family? And she said, no, as a matter of fact, I'm the first engineer in my entire family history. And we said, my goodness, congratulations. And then she said, as a matter of fact, I am the first one in my entire family history that will have graduated from college. And we said, that's remarkable. And then she said, as a matter of fact, I am one of very few in my entire family history that ever graduated from high school. And we said, how does that happen? And she said, my grandmother used to visit us every year from Mexico. And she would say to me, Anna, you need to go to college. And I would say to her, Grandma, I don't want to go to college. I just want to work here and live here and be around my family and friends. And my grandma would say, Anna, you have to go to college, not just for yourself, but for your kids and your grandkids and your cousins and nieces and nephews and their kids, for all of us. You have to go to college to show us that we can do it. So Anna says, my grandmother's dream became my dream, and it became my parents' dream and my brother's dream. And my dad and my brothers worked extra jobs and extra hours so that I wouldn't have to work. I could study, and then they sent me extra money so I could get through school. And I will tell you, Anna graduated near the top of her class, and she is now a professor in engineering at Wichita State University because the dream of the entire family required them to work together, and they did that. Greg Marshall is a tremendous basketball coach at Wichita State, and he's the best, I think, in a long line of really good coaches. He is so good because he is Greg Marshall. He is good because he has had assistant coaches, and he is good because he has had tremendous players that are of high character and good moral values. One particular group that everybody was so fond of included Ron Baker and Fred Van Vliet. They were all Americans. And Evan Wessel and Takeo Cotton, what a group they were. Everybody revered them. Everybody loved them. I helped broadcast the basketball games for many years with Mike Kennedy and Bob Hull. I sit at midcourt. It's the best seat in the house. Next to me was a sports reporter, a writer. Next to him was a Mr. Watchus. And Mr. Watchus is a fan, but fans can buy tickets on press row. Next to Mr. Watchus is his 6-year-old daughter, and she is in love with Ron Baker. She wears a cheerleading uniform. She has his number 31 in a washable tattoo on her face, and she comes to every game. Every time Ron Baker's name is mentioned, she jumps up wildly and cheers. Every time Ron Baker scores a basket, she shouts, Ron Baker, and turns to the crowd and shouts his name. Every time Ron Baker gets a rebound, she runs down the row screaming, Ron Baker, Ron Baker. There was a game when the ball was coming out of bounds in our direction. I get up, because here comes Ron Baker, and he's going to try to save the ball. And he gets airborne. He's parallel to the floor. I move back to try to protect him from falling into the seats. I mean, he's our All-American, for Pete's sakes. We want to save this guy. The sports reporter next to me cowers down in fear. Mr. Watches gets up, and he's going to try to save Ron Baker also. And then the little girl, who's been in love with Ron Baker, sees him coming across the table. She sprints over to where he's coming across and spreads her arms. Her dream is about to come true. You know, there are many defining moments out there for us every day. If you look for them, you will find them. Little things, like working extra hard on a project and helping someone else with theirs. Stopping at a Kool-Aid stand and complimenting the little entrepreneurs and giving them some extra money. Telling your parents that you love them and that you appreciate them. Raising your children to be your heroes. Every day is not going to be a masterpiece, but every day can be meaningful. And if you do some of the things that we talked about today and do them regularly, and if you help people feel a little bit more special, you have become a little more special yourself. Thank you. Good luck. There's a lot of happiness and there's a lot of success out there waiting, and I hope you find it. Thank you.